Welcome to Outside In. Today we have the beautiful Caris here from KB Settlements. And today we're talking everything about the settlement process from the buyer side, the seller side, so that everybody can understand what they need to know going into the process and what's happening behind the scenes, because there's a lot that happens. So Caris, tell us a bit about yourself and KB Settlements and how you got there.
Thank you, Zoe. So I originally worked, I did a journalism degree, which turned out to be, a colossal waste of time. But
Handy to have.
yeah, handy to have. My parents were like, just go to uni. We don't care what you do.
Yeah.
So I went to uni, then was like, okay, what now? And my mum said to me, and I distinctly remember the conversation whereby I pull in Bali, and she goes, I do, love settlements. I fell into it. Perhaps try it. We're similar.
Yeah.
See if you like it.
Yeah.
So I went and got a job with a law firm, so D'Angelo Legal, and then I actually went to LJ Hooker Settlements. So Barry and Janet, with Barry. So I've come full circle.
Yeah.
So then went when I felt like I was, educated enough.
Yeah.
I went and joined my mum, and just grew the business from there. Awesome. And had a rocking 12 years with her, or with KB Settlements.
Yeah.
So it's a full-on job. And then my mum retired about 6-7 years ago. I bought her out, and then very recently we merged with Capital Legal.
Excellent.
So yes,
to give you some space, you're also a mum.
Yep, I'm a mum.
Yeah.
And
it's everything. It's hard. It's hard being a working mum. You definitely juggle all the hats.
The juggle is real. It really was. I just look back on the last 4 years, and I'm like, whoa, it's a blur to me.
Yes.
Like, it's just,
Constant blur.
Yeah, just being everything to everyone. So, and now I'm still with Capital Legal and KB Settlements, and just loving it.
A wealth of experience and a journalism degree, and you didn't think you were going to use it, but here we are, like you're on a mic, on video. So
who would have thought?
Yeah, talking about, the settlement process. So you fell in love with it in the family business, and now you've got a bit of space for life, which is important.
So important.
Yeah, so important. And I guess, let's talk about then the settlement process, because it is a big process. And I think as a buyer, you literally just go, okay, I've given it to the settlement agent, and there can be a lot of miscommunication, I guess, on both sides, because people don't understand what's happening on your side.
Yeah.
So I really want people to know what's happening. So we'll talk through it like from beginning and end, buyer and seller side. So I've bought a property. My buyer's agent or real estate agent has drafted the offer, the O&A. And then it comes to you guys. So talk me through what happens from that point.
Yeah. So generally we get 95% of the time we're getting the contract post signing. So it's a signed contract, not an offer. I do love. So if for any buyers, I would say if you don't have a buyer's agent, you are working blind, because if you don't have a buyer's agent, the only other person in the whole process looking out for your needs is your settlement agent, because the seller's real estate agent works for the seller.
Yeah.
So obviously buyers will have generally a mortgage broker, but if you need any advice, I would always say to a buyer, get your settlement agent to just chat through it with you before signing, just so you understand what you're signing, because I'm finding that's probably the biggest issue, or causes the most problems, is people signing contracts and they're locked into conditions that they didn't fully understand ahead of entering into a contract to purchase a house.
Yeah, absolutely.
So once the contract's signed, the conveyancers will receive it, or the settlement agents. So the term's interchangeable. So you'll hear conveyancer and settlement agent.
There's no difference,
right? No
right?
difference. They're the same thing. And or sometimes it can be a lawyer, a property lawyer as well. So you'll get either of those. The contract will come to each side. So the seller's settlement agent will get a copy. The buyer's settlement agent will get a copy. We open a file. We contact either. So whoever we're acting for,
Yeah.
we'll get details from them. We'll make sure they're not leaving the country.
Yeah.
We'll,
I've had that recently.
or like,
We'll talk about that.
yeah. Or like sometimes the worst is if they're Army or Navy and they're like, I'm out in a few days and I can't tell you where and I won't be back for 3 months.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, like,
What?
yeah. It's just terrible when it happens. So then we obviously diarise conditions and just make sure they're being met, and we're there to offer any advice, and we just kind of, at that point, we sit and wait until conditions are met. So for a buyer, ideally they've engaged a mortgage broker or a banker to, apply for their finance.
Yes.
And in the meantime, ideally they're doing their building and pest inspections.
Yes.
I mean, we're telling them obviously to do all these things as well.
Yes.
And
we've talked about that and actually I've got an episode coming out soon for building and pests. So those conditions that you can put in, talking through them, which is great.
So important. That'll be
yes.
It's so wonderful.
Yeah. And what's included and what's not. Because like people are like, oh, okay, but we won't go into that today.
Biggest
we'll leave that one.
Cause of confusion in the whole process, I would say. So that'll be a fabulous
good
episode.
Yeah.
So basically we ask information, prepare documentation, and then once finance is approved, it's go time. So your contract becomes unconditional.
Yeah.
And then we'll go, okay, this is real. You are now buying this house.
Yeah.
So settlement date is generally 21 days from finance approval in a general sense.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a set date. Sometimes it's 30 days. So we work out the settlement date, and we start liaising with the banks, creating a Pexel workspace.
What's a Pexel workspace? Go backwards.
Okay,
because
go back.
people, yeah.
So
let's go into the detail too of what's happening at that time. So you've gone unconditional, the contract's in place. Then what's happening for you on your side?
From our side of things, so we are, first of all, telling all parties this is the due contractual settlement date.
Yeah.
Second of all, we're preparing documentation, so conveyancing documentation. And generally, it'll be sent to you via DocuSign.
Yeah.
So unless there's some cases people don't like DocuSign or we need to see them for whatever reason in person, which is very rare. Most people love DocuSign. I
love DocuSign.
We all love DocuSign.
Yeah, so when it works, it's great. No, it works mostly.
We prepare documents, we get them out. We need to ID both sellers and buyers.
In person, or can you do that?
No. So we have this fabulous system called Scantech. It's an external company it's Australian owned, and the IDs run through the DVS. So it'll ask, the person will get a text basically on behalf of us saying, we need to ID you for these purposes, and it'll ask you to upload your driver's license, passport, sometimes your marriage certificate if you've changed your name or you've been married recently, and then you will sign a form as well at the same time you're ID'd, and it runs it through the DVS, so the licensing centre, which tells us it's not fake, which is also what we're looking for, and it sends us a nice little report, but it's kept off-site on secure servers, which is what we're also looking for.
Don't want to hold information, and lots of talk about that in cybersecurity at the moment.
And just a trusted company that we feel like their servers are here.
Yeah.
We trust them,
Excellent.
Yeah, so then from there, so we've done ID, we've done conveyancing documentation, everything's all good with building and pest, everything's all good with finance. We create what's called a Pexel workspace. So all settlements are now electronic, and they occur via an electronic workspace.
That didn't happen that terribly long ago, did it?
It didn't. It was
it
2018.
COVID? Wow.
It slowly started to happen, and now it's 95 to 90.
Yeah.
It's there's the odd.
You'd probably want a settlement agent or conveyancer that's online too, right? That is using that system if they're not.
They all have to be. It's been mandated, so you can't not settle PEXA. Unless you were like self-representing or unless
you didn't have access, but you wouldn't want to do that. Yeah.
No, so it's so much easier, and there's things about it that make it safer, which I'll get into. So Pexel Workspace is brilliant. It's a room, so picture like online room, and the buyer's bank are invited, the seller's settlement agent are invited, and the seller's settlement agent will invite the seller's bank and any other interested parties. So just say there was like a caveat on title.
Yeah.
They would invite the law firm removing the caveat or anyone else who needs to be involved gets invited, so we can all see what each other are doing. So we book the settlement on, and it's generally 11:30 on the due date. And in the workspace we can chat, load documents, load the bank tell us what's happening with funds, the seller's bank tell the conveyancer what's happening with the discharge of mortgage and the how much the payout is, things like that. So it's just brilliant. So we've done that, and then 1 week before settlement, we've got the dreaded final inspection.
Yes.
So, I mean,
if there's a working order clause.
If there's a working order clause, 100%. So I'll just scale back as well. So up until that point, we're not sitting around doing nothing. We've done all our inquiries. So from the buyer side of things, we're inquiring to the Water Corporation, the council, land tax department. So part of our job is to make sure that the sellers aren't leaving, debt, that that we're adjusting all the, outgoings, with the orders and recs from council.
Adjusting the outgoings.
So
what do you
rates,
mean?
so water rates, council rates.
Stops on the day and then.
Yeah, so just that so what we don't want is for settlement to go through and the council to be like, oh, there's still $6,000 that the seller didn't pay and now it's the buyer's problem.
Yeah.
Which occasionally I will say that you'll get a council that will make a mistake and that will happen.
Yeah.
But it's very, very rare.
Yes, yeah.
Land tax, so for example, sellers, if it was not their primary place of residence or it's vacant land or commercial, they'll have land tax, which generally it's sometimes adjustable, sometimes not. So we need to make sure that they've paid it or we've collected money to pay it in full, just so there's no little lingering issues that will become the buyer's problem post-settlement.
Yeah.
And it's all dealt with whilst everyone's willing to deal with it, because once settlement's done, no one really wants to deal with anything.
Yeah, and it's really on the buyer, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because it's transferred over and you
it
can't get the
problem.
assistance from the real estate agent or the selling agent or the seller to comply with anything because
100%.
You wanted to go through it. So everything needs to be done in that time, really.
Yeah, and then if it's not done, money is held. So, for example, just say you don't get the water rates in time, the seller settlement agent will hold money back to pay it after settlement, which is very normal.
Yeah.
But we like it all done beforehand.
Yes.
So there's no nasty
Keep it
surprises.
nice.
Yeah. It's no there was a leak and now the water bill's, $5,000 and we helped $200. So.
Yeah.
So then we're doing all of that. Orders and requisitions as well are important. So they're an inquiry we do to the council, asking, is there anything you need to tell us about this property? So
a buyer's agent does check that because I always call and is everything approved? And a good selling agent generally will order those plans on behalf of the seller to have it included in, which is amazing. I've worked with a few that do that, and she's incredible. Well,
we love so much when that happens. There's nothing that makes my heart sing more when the buyer's like, I've got the plans.
Yeah,
I've checked them. It's great. And I'm like,
oh, that's great. Yeah, exactly. Or
chef's kiss.
Getting it and then saying, oh, this isn't approved, and then it being an issue later. If you know it at the time, you should always check.
Yeah. Or I love when it's just disclosed because it's, it's super common not to have, an approved patio or it's every second property in WA we're the Wild West.
Yeah.
So, and it's not an issue until, your neighbour is dobbing on you or you're trying to do something else and the council are like, what's that?
Yeah.
But also it's very hard. So orders and requisitions, we're not looking for things like that. We're looking for them to say, the seller's on notice for this unapproved structure. So even if something's unapproved, it's quite possible the seller doesn't even know.
Yeah.
So if it was done 6 owners ago or even a few owners ago, they're not going to know, and they've lived with it with no issue and it's been fine. So they can only disclose what they know.
Yeah.
So if the council's on, so often it'll go through and something won't be approved and it's fine and they'll probably just live with it for the rest of their days with no issues.
Yes, sometimes,
Sometimes the council will be like, you'll have a seller who's head in the sand, they knew about the issue, they don't want to deal with it, and the council are like, they're on notice for this, and then it's just
becomes a thing. Or you put a pool in and they see it and there's a pool inspection and then, things can come up.
Non-compliant. Yeah. So that's what orders and recs are for. the worst story I've ever heard about
Oh, I love
them.
these
Oh my
ones.
God. I have not like
Yes.
shivers.
Yeah.
So it was a property in like, it's, I heard it third hand through Stewart Title. So
Okay.
Stewart Title is a company that sells title insurance to protect against issues like this. So
That's a good thing. We should go into that.
yes,
Yeah.
it's brilliant. So basically, this first home buyer bought this kind of older rural property outside of Albany. She had title insurance. Had ordered title insurance. The settlement agent got the orders and requisitions, didn't read them, but sent them to her. She didn't read them. No one read them.
Oh, no.
The house was, it settled.
Yeah.
The house was condemned. It was like, had to be, it was
Torn down.
torn down.
Actually condemned.
Yeah, actually
Okay.
condemned. And because
So is that actually, I've not dealt with that before. So that is when they've come and they've ruled it unfit to live in. So it has to be torn down.
Yeah.
Is that correct? Yeah.
correct?
Has to be.
Yeah.
They can't rectify it in any way.
No.
Oh, wow. So
Yeah.
what happened to the building and pest inspection? With the
I don't
building
know if-
inspection?
I don't know
Or
if
was
they
it
were
as
done.
is?
It was
Yeah, it must have
probably
been
as
as
is, or
is.
maybe it came back fine. Maybe it was. She didn't go into that much detail, but the horror factor of it was, even though she had title insurance, because they had ordered the orders and requisitions, and the buyer had been given the orders and requisitions, and it wasn't picked up on it. They didn't cover it. It was because they're like, well, you knew about it.
Oh, no.
I know.
Oh, no. So check those, or a good settlement agent will
We'll
check
check
the
them.
orders and
Yeah.
requisitions.
And
Okay.
flag it immediately.
So her settlement agent didn't in this case? Okay.
No,
Okay.
it was missed.
So
and-
check those things. Read through the orders and requisitions. So
Yeah.
do you provide them before settlement?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
we would like not settle without them, or we would, get you to sign off or approval from you to settle without them. I mean, and the thing is, if you had title insurance, it doesn't matter, because if you don't have them, it'll cover whatever. It'll cover.
So title insurance, just tell me a bit about that. It will
Covers unknown risk, such as boundary encroachment, unapproved structures, condemnment.
Yeah, nice. If I can't live in my house that I've just bought. And what do they cover? To a certain amount, the full property, or does it go
property and inflation up to a certain percent? And
All right.
and for a while after you sell, I think it's a brilliant product. Like
That is good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love
Is
it.
it expensive?
No, well, it goes up with the scale fee of the house. So if you're buying, for something $5 million, it's probably really expensive.
Yeah.
It is really expensive. But if you're buying under $1 million, it's about between $600 to $800.
Okay,
yeah,
that's
so not
good.
too bad.
Yeah. And is there a time that you would say to get it more than a different time? Like, say, if it's a brand newish house, would you say maybe
I would say
not
it's
as
like
needed?
I would say lower risk.
Yeah.
Because it's newly surveyed.
Yeah.
However, saying that, apparently a lot of the
Things are wrong sometimes.
yeah, a lot of the new land development has been having a lot of claims because of they'll peg it, and then if the pegs are moved and the slab goes down,
It's wrong. Yeah.
yeah. So
And what's the
that's-
implication of that, I guess?
It's just a total mess.
Yeah,
so
okay,
you
fine.
then have your boundary on something that's not really. So you've got your survey, your legal survey, which
Yeah.
is like a deposited plan or a plan at
Yes.
Landgate, and then the reality of the plan is going to be different to what's been popped on.
So it'd have to be
Yes.
resurveyed, then reissued to that. So that's quite costly because, I've
huge.
have had that. So they can be like, depending on the level of work for the surveyor, it's like,
Yeah.
you know,
It's also
thousands.
dealing with, depends when it's picked up. So if it's like, the person who you might have had someone using that land for a certain period of time who then has adverse possession claims. So they will claim that part of
Wow.
your title and plan. It's just,
Get it.
Yeah.
Get title
It's-
insurance. And you
yeah.
just never know. Okay. So that's good to
mean-
know. There's no real, you just don't know what's going to happen or what. Yeah.
there are lower risk properties. So I guess if you,
An apartment, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
An apartment. Yeah.
Okay.
Apartment for sure. I mean, there's something.
Because it comes under the, somewhat, it's under the strata.
There's more protection.
So, yeah.
And you're not really going to have a boundary issue. And like
Yes.
you're highly unlikely to have a
Encroaching,
unapproved,
boundary.
unapproved
and-
issue.
Yeah.
For strata, it covers things like, so when it's a strata property, we do something called a Section 110 request, which we pay the strata company for on behalf of the buyer.
Yeah.
And just say they forgot, they sometimes make mistakes. Like everyone does, human error. just say they forgot to put in a huge levy that might be coming up, it would cover that. So just say there was,
Yeah, we always check those.
Yeah.
Yeah, very helpful to check.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, cool.
Yes.
So where did we get to? We got to PEXA and then we went into
PEXA. Then we went to title insurance.
Yeah.
So your settlement agent will ask you, do you want title insurance? And you'll say yes or no. And it's just, I'd say 50% of people take it out.
Yeah.
So depending on how risk adverse you are and, how confident you are in the property and
you could check all those other things or ask your settlement agent for their conditions too,
Absolutely.
get around it and double check, I guess. But
if you have plans from council,
yeah.
And you kind of can look on the land gate mapping system and go, okay, well, the boundary is roughly where I thought it was, then, that's you're mitigating risk there.
Yeah. And that's good.
Yeah.
How to get around it. But it's good to have it just in case. And how long are you covered with that insurance?
The whole time you own the property, and I think for a few years after you sell.
Okay, just in case something's happened and you're liable or what have you.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's worth it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Also things like property fraud, so title fraud.
Yes.
Just say
heard a story about that recently, like one of the first cases. But yeah, I think with cybersecurity being what it is, we can mitigate as much as possible. But I think those people are very smart and clever. So there's always going to be a new way of scamming someone. So you've got to be really careful.
So true.
Yeah.
And we won't know about their new way until they do it.
Exactly.
And then we all learn from that case.
Exactly,
So,
yeah.
Forever learning. Okay, so then we're in the PEXA workspace.
Okay, cool. Sounds pretty cool. It's like a chat, like a little Facebook group type thing, but all the work plans are in there and everything's
It's so good.
Yeah.
It was
we
probably
should get them as a sponsor for this episode.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but everybody uses it. It's kind of like a system that everyone uses now.
It was brought out and there was meant to be a competitor called Simply.
Yeah.
But they just haven't
got to,
Yeah, so there's it's right now it's just everyone's using there's
PEXA,
only PEXA to use. And I think it would just be so hard. I do feel really
now.
bad for this Simply.
Get to market first, people, and build a good product,
So we love PEXA. They're brilliant. So we're in the lead up to settlement. If you have a working order clause,
do your final inspection.
Sometimes there won't be a working order clause, but the person will still want to see the property again just to make sure it's in the same condition. So
you can, but it doesn't. They don't have to agree to that.
They don't have to agree.
No.
They don't have to let you through.
Yeah,
they can say no. Generally, they just do.
Yeah.
To make it, good.
Yeah. Show me how to use this and this and the oven and whatnot.
Sometimes it opens up a can of worms.
Yeah.
So
you're like, oh, this. Yes, exactly.
it depends how kind all parties have been to each other during the process.
Yes.
I think will determine if you. Are generally allowed through.
Well,
if you're not.
I've got a burning question, so don't let me forget. We were doing Tales in the Field, with your scariest, worst ever story. So we do want a couple of those because I think it's important for people to know how smooth it can be,
how bad it can be,
and how bad it can be. So and how to mitigate that for your process because we want to make buying home fun again.
Yeah.
So it's been a few years of not being so fun,
100%.
Oh, that's why I got into this industry because I was I was the buyer and I was having a terrible time. I was like, I don't want to do this now. Actually don't because, you're being outbid by other things. I wasn't being represented in the process, so I didn't know what I was signing. I didn't know what was happening. And I think that's a lot of people.
It's overwhelming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You get into a price war on the spot. It felt like an auction, but it was a home
something
open.
You saw for 5 minutes. You went through and you stood in a home for 5 minutes and you were like,
this is the one.
It.
Yeah. Yes.
And then you are putting up your life savings for something that you are unsure of. And then sometimes if you have, you're stressed, you've had a bad experience. Yeah, people say to me all the time, oh, I don't want to do this anymore or it's all too hard. And it's like, please, I hate when they feel like that.
Yeah.
And it is one of the most stressful things people will ever do, especially if it's, not gone well. Or a lot of it is expectations, managing expectations. And again, back to the, they've bought a 100-year-old home but want it to be a brand new house.
Yeah.
It's just things like that I find can be really difficult to manage. Yeah.
Yeah. It's all about education. And that's what this is about too, making sure and having a chat so people can see both sides of the process. Because also lots of people who are buying have just sold. Yep. So they're going through that process twice. Let's talk about that. You're not allowed to have the same settlement agent on either side.
You can. It's just frowned upon. And
because you wouldn't want that because they can't be impartial, right?
Yeah, you can't do your
Oh, I thought it
Like,
was actually that you can't do it, but it's
you
just
still
not the done
can. It
thing.
has to be completely disclosed. Everyone has to
Okay, yeah.
know. Everyone would sign off on forms allowing it.
Yeah.
You would generally do it. Like, I would do it if they were related,
Yes, got you. Yeah.
or if they just want a really quick settlement. There's no conditions.
Yeah.
It's vacant land. Maybe there's really nothing that can go wrong.
Yeah.
That's when I would do it. When I'm like, look, the risk is so low. Let's just
Yes.
get this done.
But two different parties, different
Much
properties
better.
have your own person, because it's kind of like having your own, like your own lawyer, your own team.
100%. It's
And they shield you from the other side.
Yeah.
So you're protected in that process.
yeah. So anything you might want to say, especially if you're angry and you really want to,
Yeah.
you know,
Oh, a counsellor too now.
yeah,
No,
yeah, for sure. Well, like often the buyer or seller will, you know, say this, and then part of our job is to say, they would like, or like basically convey it in a
nice
way that it's like, can we please,
Yeah. Can we please do this? And how's that going?
in a nice professional
Yeah.
way that's not going to inflame. So part of our job is not to inflame further.
Yeah. To help it go, through smoothly.
Because you do catch more flies with honey.
Yeah.
There is a time and a place to become, you know.
You do catch more flies with honey. Oh, I like that saying.
Yeah.
Is that a Caris saying? Or?
It is. Well, I mean, I think it's
I
just
actually
a life
haven't heard that
saying.
one. But yeah, I always muddle up sayings, but that's probably
I'm
mum
a
thing.
shocker.
I like that. So seller side, buyer side, kind of the same then, really. It's just both ends. Or is there something different that's happening on either side?
Buyer side, the job is too. So specifically for a buyer, we're doing your due diligence, we're doing the inquiries, we're paying for those, we're lodging your contract with the Office of State Revenue within 2 months. So you're not getting a late lodgement fine, which is also really important, which a lot of people don't know about. So if you have a long settlement, it needs, and you know, you're putting off appointing a settlement agent, super important to just appoint someone simply so they lodge the contract.
Yeah.
We see it all the time in off the plan purchases. They don't appoint the settlement agent till they know, you know, settlement's close, and sometimes it's a $13,000 fine.
Yeah,
so,
okay.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Let's talk about that after, actually, because I think that's a different situation, because there's different deals that can happen with a house and land package.
Yeah.
But yeah, you would have seen a lot, so your insight on that, I think, would be really great.
So that we're, you know, balancing up your file. We're saying, so we will send the buyer a statement going, look, this is the total amount you need to settle, including your duty, all the fees, adjustments of water rates, council rates, land tax if it's adjustable. And if they're paying cash, we will say, okay, we need you to put this money into our trust account, which is so getting people the trust account details securely is a whole thing. So PEXA is a brilliant way in which we do that. So PEXA, there's something called PEXA Key, which we can securely send the client details and give them, you know, the trust account details via PEXA Key, which they can then get, and then we verbally confirm. So one thing that's so important is fraud and scammers is such a huge thing in our industry right now, and people are always losing their money.
Wow.
So if you are putting money into your settlement agent's trust account, call them and check. I would also tend to just do $1,000 and just confirm with them that it got there, and then you can. Yeah,
because there's an interception thing where people are sending emails from that look like your settlement agency, and you would think that it's 100% you. So always call and check.
Always.
Yeah.
And then, so we are sending a final statement saying, okay, if you're paying cash, trust account. If you're not paying cash, your bank is bringing, this is your loan amount. This is what we're allowed to use at settlement, because there'll be fees and things taken out. And then this is your contribution, so which will either need to be in what's called an authority to debit account with the lender, which is our preference, because it's always best to keep money in your own account. It reduces any risk of fraud or email interception. If they haven't set that up, we ask them for the money to be paid into trust. So that happens. We try and do that, you know, at least 7 days out, just to give them enough time to move the money. But again, that depends on the bank. So the buyers also were signing their bank documents, getting insurance. Sometimes, you know, there's delays. With banks, it could be anything from they've spelling error on the name, you know, they need to check conditions, certificate of currency, guarantor. so many things. So
Yeah.
that's
Lots can happen.
yeah, and that's why it's really important to have a good broker or
Yeah.
banker that is all over it. So then once we have the money in trust and all parties are ready, so we can see on PECs that everyone's accepted.
Yeah.
We'll let them know, like settlement's all booked in, and then that's really it. Then we can settle. So that's the buyer side of things.
Yeah.
And then once settlement goes through, if the seller was living there, they don't have to hand the keys over until 12 noon the day following.
Yeah, lots of people don't know
They
that.
don't. It can cause
And also there's a grace period with settlement.
Yes.
Talk about that because
Okay.
I just had that recently. So yeah, and
Yes.
it's something that you don't often explain as a buyer's agent until
Yeah.
it's sort of coming, and then you're like, okay.
So for whatever reason,
Yeah.
unless it's written out of the contract, which is
Rare.
really rare, either party, buyer or seller, has 3 business days grace in which they can extend the settlement date or delay settlement without
And no
incurring-
variations required.
No
for
variation.
that.
So
Yeah.
it could be settlement day, and
Yeah.
the buyer could say, we're not settling because, and they don't even have to give a reason. I mean,
Yeah.
ideally they do because people like to know,
Yeah.
people like reasoning. So if it's us, I'm always like, we need to tell them why,
Yeah.
just so they understand.
Yeah.
And ideally you don't do it on the day of settlement, you do it before, but sometimes
Yeah.
there's a kerfuffle with final inspection, or it could be anything.
Yeah. I just had a sick client who was coming back from Thailand, needed more time to move out. But yeah, then the buyers needed to get in because they needed to get out of their rental. So yeah, it did go to the 3 days and then the keys the next day.
Yeah.
And then there was even a couple of hours overlap. So
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah.
That's really tough.
It was hard for them, but I think we manage it like you can manage the process. But yeah, it does happen. So it's good for people to know that you could get to settlement date and it could be 3 more business days.
Yep.
So allow for that
time. Do not
just
book
in
your
case,
moving truck.
to be the day after.
yeah.
Or because the day after, they might say, I'm not going to give you the keys till 12 o'clock the next day.
Yeah.
In which case then you've booked the moving truck for that day and you don't get the settlement doesn't go through till about 11:30, sometimes later anyway.
Yeah. I would always say at final inspection, which most people are doing, you can see if the seller's moved out. You can chat to the real estate agent about when you're getting the keys, when they're planning to hand over, and that will generally give you some assurance.
Yeah.
Because people have to plan their life.
Yeah,
you have to plan removal lists.
Not having a date's really hard.
It's really hard. So generally it's completely fine. Occasionally, we're dealing with people who are, people can be unpredictable. Humans are,
very unpredictable. Yeah.
So if you can kind of get a sense of it, if the sellers act like seeming like they're not organised and they're not moved out at final inspection, I'd be not, waiting to book a removalist till I know exactly what's happening.
Yeah, or just allow for that time really in your planning. Pack the other side and give yourself a few days when you're planning, like 4 business days.
Like if you're in a rental, just maybe a week's buffer.
Yeah,
I kind of know it's an extra cost, but it's so worth it for the stress.
Yeah.
Because it can be really stressful. And,
yes, it's a stressful time. It's a stressful time for both sides. 2 people are moving. Everything's heightened.
Yeah.
So, knowing all this can help prevent some of that, which is good.
So true.
Yeah.
And then from the seller side of things, so the main thing we're doing early on is straight up we're asking you to apply for your ATO foreign residence capital gains withholding clearance certificate.
Oh, wow. That's a long title.
Yes, it's a long title. So basically what was happening is foreign people.
Okay, we'll go into a little bit of how that works. So if you are a foreign investor, you can buy a property in WA, but now there's new laws around that.
I think from today is the 31st of
day,
March. Today is the last day. So
but it can't.
have to
that just says not established. So, so you can buy a new property.
Okay.
Which means no one's lived in it before. So established is, like that's how it's defined, I guess.
Yeah.
So it could be a brand new off the plan apartment or a, development, what's it, like a turnkey house sort of thing where no one's lived in.
Okay, lovely.
So I guess that would still come into it.
Yeah.
And then talk us through though that process. If I can buy, they have to apply for.
So buyers would need
super hard.
Buyers, it's super hard. So you need your FIRB approval unless
for an investment. Yeah.
So sometimes the developer will have a blanket FIRB approval for the building.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Love that. So the buyer then doesn't need to apply for it. And they also have 7% extra on the duty. So if just say the property's $1 million, you're paying an extra $70,000 on top of your duty. So foreign transfer duty. And with the FIRB approval, it's just the sheer cost of it. So if the building doesn't have a blanket FIRB approval, which is really rare. I haven't seen one in a long time.
Yeah.
You need to pay for the buyers need to pay for FIRB approval, which isn't guaranteed you'll get approved either.
You have to have a reason, right, to buy a property.
Yeah, you have to have a reason. So, or you have to be the right visa. There's a lot to it.
Yeah.
And it's just I think it starts at about $40,000.
Yeah,
I think
it's very expensive.
Yeah.
Right. We'll leave that. So it's not the majority of what you're doing.
No, we rarely do them.
Yeah.
Just because most people, it's just like such a barrier to entry with the extra cost. And then when selling, so if these rules are relatively new and around making it difficult for foreign buyers. So there are still a lot of foreign owners. So what kept happening was foreign people were leaving the country and not paying capital gains to the ATO. So the ATO said, right, every single person selling, so that came in the 1st of Jan this year, every single person selling must apply for something called the Foreign Residence Capital Gains Withholding Clearance Certificate. So it's just an online application. It takes 5 minutes, but it can take up to 28 days to get the certificate. Wow. So that's why we say do it early.
And your settlement agent will apply for that?
No, you're not. We're not meant to. Okay. So because
you send the form.
Yeah, it's a link. So we send a link online. If someone's needs help, we have to get a form for them to sign to do it, and that we can do it. It's just
it's quite simple though, isn't it?
It's
just a link.
So easy. Yeah. It's a few questions about are you a Australian person for are you holding the property on behalf of a foreign person and have you lodged a tax return?
Yeah. Okay, perfect.
So it's really easy. It's just something we flag early.
Yeah.
And then if there's a mortgage, we say, right, let's just get the discharge of mortgage off.
Yeah.
Nice and early.
And I think that's still a paper thing, isn't it?
Yeah, generally. So they want your original signature.
Do it, but then you've got to, so people always get lagged on the.
Yeah.
Actually, snail mail does still take ages, unless you do.
Yeah. Also, you can
track that,
can print it off, sign it, and scan it back.
You've got to mail it.
Oh, no,
do you have to mail it?
You don't have to mail
okay,
it. So you don't. It's just that it needs to be most banks.
Yeah,
most banks only want ink signed because they're comparing your signature.
Why did they have a recent where it had to be mailed? I can't remember.
It could maybe it was a really obscure bank.
Yeah.
It wouldn't,
it was Macquarie, I think. So was it?
So Macquarie even now.
Or was it Commonwealth? I think it was Commonwealth.
I wonder what it was for then. It could have been like a bank guarantee or something.
Yeah, loan discharge, I think. And then, so anyway, some banks might require you to mail it after, but you do ink sign it and can scan and have it there. So maybe it's just like a formality that's got to hit them later.
Some banks, no, they definitely don't need the original, so I'm not sure. It could. I'm sure it was. Sometimes if they're suspicious, maybe they'll say come in.
I'm suspicious.
Like if they think that something's going down, who knows?
You check that. Yeah.
Macquarie, like some banks are accepting a DSIG, which is also amazing.
Yeah.
So it just depends, but then they'll follow up with a lot of questions.
Yeah. Okay.
So now on the discharge for sellers, they'll always ask, would you like your money to go into an account you already own with us?
Yeah.
I always say use that if you bank with that bank because the bank can see what accounts you own. So they're just popping the funds straight into the account you already own. So it just minimizes risk of fraud.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
So anything else on the seller side?
Seller side, VOI and so verification of identity, which again is, scan tech or coming in. If there's anything like a survivorship application, sometimes changing and doing a change of name stat deck, making sure they are who they are, like bits and bobs. If there's a caveat, getting that sorted. But sellers are a lot less work than a buyer. It's just because,
you're just handing it over and they're taking it on. So,
like our main job is that they are who they are and they are getting their money. So, yeah.
Oh, so there's actually a lot to both sides, but more on the buyer side. Mm-hmm. But I guess even just knowing all of that is super helpful. And your settlement agent or conveyancer will guide you through the whole process. And there's some good key bits in there about, saving time for settlement, like after. Actually, let's go to, this always helps, Tales from the Field. Tell us
Gosh.
so a straightforward settlement will
Yeah.
just happen, no drama. On the day, get your keys on the day of settlement in the afternoon, go collect them and you're done. But tell us, give us a story, probably your worst, most curly or funny, it can be funny, story. Tales from the field.
Okay. Oh my God, there's
That
so
will
many.
help. Yeah, so many.
I have had sellers call me and they hadn't handed over yet because it wasn't 12 noon the next day. And it was a case where the buyers were not sweet at all and they were very, very combative the whole
Why?
settlement. They just were really aggressive. And that's just the way some people communicate. That's why
Yeah.
I say always just try and hold it back and be kind and just
Yeah.
at least
Understanding
civil.
that things are happening on both sides. Yeah.
Just be civil, because if you then become aggressive and verging on abusive, then the sellers just will write you off.
Yeah.
And like it's so hard to find that middle ground and continue on with the negotiations. So
Yeah.
the sellers it had been their principal place of residence and I had acted for the sellers and they were so upset with these buyers by the end of the deal. And the sellers were lovely. They simply said, you know what, you can have the keys at 12 noon the next day because we are just sick of you
Yeah.
and your attitude.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
the buyers broke in.
What?
Yep, the buyers broke in.
Oh my gosh. Okay, don't do that, everyone.
No.
Like, please don't do that.
No.
Wow. And because technically they don't own it. Well, they do own it, actually.
They do. That's the thing. And then it becomes
why is the law like that you can do the next day? It's like a grace period, I guess.
Well, it's in the joint form of general conditions. So
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it's dictated in the contract, it's a contractual breach. It's simply like once the title's in their name and the money's paid, the only thing we could say was call the police, but the police aren't going to do anything. These are the legal owners.
Yeah, now,
so it's just
but that's why I'm wondering why it's in the general conditions still. Like, like it.
I guess so. There's rules and guidelines. It's in there because if you did live there and you needed the time to move out, and maybe you needed the money
You have to get the keys somewhere else, or
Okay, so
wow.
it's to really give people selling to buy the time.
Yeah, the next day to, I guess, get a hotel, or I don't know.
Just
doesn't feel like enough time for that either.
Their house. So if you were just say you were selling and buying on the same day, you've got 12 noon to kind of move your stuff to your new house,
yeah,
I
okay,
guess.
yeah. I guess back in the day it used to happen
A lot.
probably more on the same day as it does now.
So another
Interesting.
this one's horrendous.
Okay, well,
and again, we were acting
preparing.
for a seller, and he knew that the buyers were planning to, knock the house down. And he had just put in a new kitchen, like a caboodle type thing.
Yeah.
So he was like, I'll just take the kitchen.
No.
No, I'm not kidding. He took the kitchen. And the buyers come in and were just like, they had, you pay
were
for
they
a house.
going to live in there?
No, they were knocking it, but they could have, it was their kitchen that they paid for.
It was their kitchen to take.
Yeah,
if
it was
they
their
wanted
kitchen to
it
take. It wasn't his to take. So we had to call him and be like, you need to put this kitchen back right.
How do you put the whole kitchen back?
We said, we don't care, you need to do it. You just, if you took it out, you can put it back in. It was a caboodle, so I guess he did it himself.
So he's taking it out in chunks. Oh, wow.
He was like, they don't
crazy.
need it. And I was like,
it doesn't matter. You can't take the kitchen. Yeah,
It was so funny.
Crazy.
Yeah. So you see it all.
Yeah, that is. All right. So have we covered everything?
I think
What else
so.
do you think people want to know? Like
one more really important one that I'm super passionate about is entity and who's going on contract, and please get it right the first time, because if you don't, it can be so
talk us through that. It can be costly, right?
It can be costly. It just also can be so time consuming and it's just stress inducing for everyone, because if there's no guarantee you'll be able to get your right entity on contract.
Can I get a settlement agent to work with me when I'm putting in an offer?
You absolutely can.
And would they, because I don't have to pay anything, would they be upset as long as I'm going to move and they know, what if I don't get accepted? Probably
That's fine.
people
That's
think.
fine. I sometimes work with people for weeks or months until they find.
Okay, that's good to know.
I would be upset if they didn't then use me.
Yeah.
But I'd rather them have, enter into a contract that they're happy with and understand, and it's correct from the beginning.
Yeah.
And that they know everything that they're signing.
Yeah.
So
good.
With the entity thing, though, that's more so it's completely fine when you're doing, like a mum and dad or, everyday buyers in an individual sense. If it just becomes really tricky if you're buying like in a trust or
self-managed super fund with a bare trust that's buying, and it needs to be 100% And actually we could talk a bit through that. If you are a self-managed super fund buying property, what is that process? Because it's a little bit different as well.
So you need to speak to your accountant, first of all. Speak to your broker who specialise. Like if you're funding, which a lot do, speak to your broker. You need to be seeking the right advice before you do anything.
Yes.
And then when entering into the contract, your financial advisor or accountant will tell you the correct entity to pop down.
Yeah.
Especially if you're like borrowing.
Make sure you copy it from them.
Copy it from them, because once it's down, it's so hard to change.
Wow. One little thing. Don't get that little thing wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And try and seek advice from a Western Australian accountant and financial planner, because it's a really different over east, and they don't understand how it is done in WA, and they'll occasionally give advice that's just not like just debatable. Yeah.
Should we talk a little bit about the contract, and then we'll finish with that, I think.
Okay.
So what are your tips and tricks? Maybe speak to a settlement agent first and foremost before you write it and get their assistance with it. But if you are on the spot writing, like an offer, what's your advice? Like terms, stick to what is there anything I should look out for?
So you're on the spot. You've got to put your offer in that day. It's a Sunday afternoon.
Yes.
Okay. So obviously finance, number one.
Shouldn't be looking without finance. We've talked about that. Like that is the best thing you can do. So So that's all sorted. I'm writing it up. What should I write?
So you need your finance clause. Number one. I would always say a smaller deposit as you can get away with from a buyer's point of view.
Because it doesn't actually go to the buyer. The seller. It doesn't go to the seller. It sits in a seseparate account. It's just like a good faith of the contract.
It's a good faith. It doesn't really matter, because, it's really clear cut about getting it back and meeting conditions. But, occasionally if someone did want to walk away and it's so rare that it happens, but throw their hands in the air and have a tanty and walk away, they will lose it. So if you are temperamental and you think that might happen,
don't. Yes. Don't put a big deposit, all right. If you can, whatever
if
you can.
But again, sometimes you're going to need to secure the property.
5 to 10 can look good if it's a bit higher.
Yeah.
We'll talk about those in another. But the finance is pretty, it's 21 days, finance 21 days from that point, settlement.
Yeah. And I would say always, make sure you get your building and pest inspections, unless they can, sometimes they will have one that is recently done. I mean, I would trust it.
Just still do it. I think it's great. Or, if it's an apartment, maybe not pest or, and maybe not building and pest for an apartment. But
I guess it depends when it was done. If it was done by a registered builder, in the last 3 months, I would be inclined to just trust it. Just say they, for some reason, they had a deal fall over because someone didn't get finance, but they had their building and pest, I'd probably just say, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, perfect.
But then that's just me. I do trust third parties, and, the industry's regulated enough that no one's fudging building and pest reports.
Yeah, exactly,
Then seller's warranty.
Yeah.
One thing also people don't understand is a seller's warranty is a warranty, not a condition. So a lot of buyers rely on the fact that, okay, the seller's warranty reads, the seller warrants that plumbing, gas and electrical fixtures and fittings will be in good working order at settlement.
Yeah.
Often something will break, or something's not working as perfectly as it could be, or the seller didn't realise something wasn't captured by the clause and it doesn't work, and the seller can say, I'm not fixing it.
And change it to sort of as is.
No, they can't change it. They can say, I'm not doing it, and then it's on the onus is on. You can't delay settlement over it because it's not a warranty.
Okay.
So essentially, the buyer would then have to take the seller to court.
They just pay for the item?
Ideally, the seller will. Yeah. So in very rare cases, you'll have a seller who just doesn't want to and feels strongly about it and doesn't just.
They can't change it at that point.
They can't change it, but they can say, I'm not fixing. So for example, aircon.
Yes.
So the buyer's done final inspection. The aircon's not getting cold.
Yeah.
The seller's saying it's always been like that. It's fine. I'm not fixing it. Right.
Yeah.
Technically, it's not in good working order because it doesn't get cold, but because it's not a condition, the buyer can't hold up settlement. The buyer, it doesn't have to be satisfied.
Yes.
So all the buyer can do is lodge a claim in the magistrate's court after settlement to try and get the funds off the buyer to pay for, a service or a new
Well, you could negotiate that
You could
during
negotiate,
that
yeah.
process, which would probably
Ideally.
be more ideal.
Much more ideal to negotiate.
Yeah,
sometimes you
it
can't.
happens.
Yeah,
Does that
sometimes
happen a lot?
occasionally you'll have someone just dig their heels in, like a
Yeah.
seller, and just say, I'm not doing anything.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's like, if the clause is written, this contract is subject to plumbing, gas and electrical fixtures and fittings being in working order at settlement, then that's a condition. So
Yes.
then you can just delay settlement until the condition's satisfied, and then you
Yeah.
can charge them penalty interest. So then
So
you would just
write
negotiate.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. So
If you're going to live there, I think, write a working order clause, right?
yeah. So from a buyer's point of view, absolutely
Yeah.
do that. From a seller's point of view, absolutely don't do that,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
you want it to be it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this
So
is why we're now on both sides of the
Yeah.
fence, right? They probably don't want that in there. And then we go into, are they going to accept yours? If they know a couple of things, they might go to another offer that is just
Yeah.
a bit more clean.
That's the
So
thing.
you need to manage that process.
100%.
Yeah, which
So
is what we do a lot. Like, we're like, oh, will they do that? Yeah. To
Yeah.
protect our buyer, but also to make it favourable for the seller to accept their offer.
It's a fine line.
Yeah.
You have to just educate them to be like, okay, well, all these things can go wrong. However, if you put in clauses to mitigate all these risks, there is no way your offer will be accepted.
Yes, that's right.
So, I mean,
I do know someone who did that a few times and then became a client because they
Yeah.
kept writing offers that had a lot of, conditions on it, and no seller wanted to accept that.
So often I will help a buyer. So I've got this amazing, really buyer bias clause, but I say to them, use with caution, because a seller in their right mind will reject this.
Yeah.
Because it's, and you won't get anywhere. So
Yeah.
this is what it ideally would look like to protect you, but don't
Yeah.
actually use it.
Yeah,
So-
and do you want to lose the property
Yeah.
because of that? So I guess you've got to bring it back and ask, and that's a perfect way to end our chat, I think. If you love the house, now you know how to, go through the settlement process, but if you love the house, you've got to think about how you want to draft that offer in a way that's favourable for the seller to accept it for you too, and
So
but
true.
also protects you.
So
it's like
true.
as we said, it's a fine line.
Yeah.
But yeah, you have a plethora of professionals, including Caris from KB Settlements, to help you and guide you through the process. And I actually think the key thing for me today was I didn't know that I could get a settlement agent before, if I know I'm going to use you guys, I'm buying a house, I'm going to draft it, speak to you first,
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Caris,
Thank
for
you
coming
so
in.
much for having me.
I hope to have you back, and we'll have to do a different spin
Anytime.
on everything, or see what questions come in and and answer them that way.
We do a spooky, scary story time for settlements.
that would be good. Tales from the field.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think people learn a lot from those because what can happen.
Yeah.
Talking through the process. Lots of people have gone through that. So and they just don't know what's right and what's wrong. You always think, oh, this shouldn't have happened. So yeah, it's good to talk through it.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.